My name is Charlotte Pierce, and I'm 67 years old. I built a family with my husband Richard for over 4 decades, brick by brick, moment by moment. But the night they told me to sit down and stay quiet at my own husband's estate dinner was the night I realized just how invisible I had become in the house we created together. They said I was just the widow, like I hadn't helped build every corner of that legacy. I smiled, stood up, and walked out without saying a word. I had ironed my blouse twice that evening, checked my lipstick 3 times, and told myself it's just dinner, just family. I brought my best apple pie, Richard's favorite. I thought maybe it would soften the mood. Maybe they'd remember who I was to him, to all of them. The dinner was held at my son Ethan's house, the modern glass-walled one he and Kendra bought after Richard and I co-signed the loan. Not that anyone mentioned that anymore. When I walked in, no one looked up. Ethan was pouring wine like he was hosting a Napa tasting. Kendra, in her gold heels and her polished grin, clicked across the kitchen like she owned it. Their teenage son barely gave me a nod, the kind you give a distant aunt at a funeral. The table we were sitting at, I bought that last Christmas. We sat down, 9 of us. Ethan opened with, "We've been thinking it might be time to simplify things." I knew exactly what that meant. Less of me, more of them. I asked gently, "Have you spoken with the lawyer about the trust?" Kendra didn't even look up from her phone. She muttered, "You're just the widow, Charlotte. Maybe just stay quiet for now." The room went still. Then Ethan chuckled. Trevor, my younger son, followed, like it was all some sitcom moment. My hands shook under the table, not from weakness but from the sheer weight of what had just been said. I looked at every face around me and saw it clear they didn't see me as a person, just as an obstacle. So I set my fork down. I stood up. I didn't say a single word. And I walked out. But I wasn't leaving the table forever. I was just stepping away to come back with everything. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. I sat in Richard's old leather recliner, wrapped in the throw blanket we used to fight over on cold nights, the one with frayed edges and a faint coffee stain he never noticed. The room felt like it was holding its breath, and I just kept replaying Kendra's words in my head. "You're just the widow. Maybe just stay quiet." Like I was an afterthought in the very legacy I helped build. Around 2:30 in the morning, I stood up because I couldn't take the silence anymore. I walked barefoot across the hallway to the filing cabinet we'd always called the no-go drawer. It was where we kept passports, titles, tax returns, the old wills, things the boys were never supposed to touch. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe a reminder that I still mattered. That Richard hadn't left me completely defenseless. My fingers were cold as I flipped through the old folders. Insurance papers. Birth certificates. The photo of us on a hiking trip in Vermont, younger and sunburned and smiling. I was about to give up when I saw it. A thick white envelope, tucked behind the folders like it had been waiting. My name was written on the front in Richard's handwriting, just one word. Charlotte. He wasn't the type to leave sentimental letters. He showed love by checking tire pressure, not writing poetry. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside, there was a single sheet of lined paper. And behind it, documents. Dozens of them, all clipped together. The letter said, "If you're reading this, something's already gone wrong. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I knew you'd try to fix it instead of protect yourself. The boys, they're not bad, but they're selfish. And Kendra, she's worse. I saw it happening the moment I got sick. So I made some changes. Everything is in your name. The house, the accounts, the lake property. You have full authority, power of attorney. They don't know. Don't feel bad for using it. Don't let them shame you into silence. And if they ever try to take what's yours, burn it all down." I just sat there, staring at the words. My husband, the man who once taped reminders on the fridge to water the plants, had done something monumental. And he had done it quietly. For me. Because he knew this day might come. At 3:47 a.m., I picked up the landline and called Howard Bennett. He'd been our family lawyer for more than 30 years. A quiet man with a gray mustache, a fondness for old jazz records, and the only person who still called me Mrs. Pierce no matter how many times I told him to stop. He picked up after 4 rings, voice groggy but steady. Once I said my name, I didn't waste a second. "I found the paperwork Richard left. He signed everything over to me. I want to activate it." Today? He paused. Does anyone else know? No, I said, not yet. Good, he replied. Don't tell them. I'll be there by 9. When I hung up, I stood in the hallway and looked at the photo of Richard and me on our wedding day. We were standing on the courthouse steps, nervous and young, clutching hands like we were all each other had. I touched the frame and whispered, I've got it now. You don't have to worry. By the time Howard rang the doorbell at 8:57 a.m., I was already dressed, blouse pressed, hair pinned back the way Richard used to like it, light makeup, steady breath. The dining table was covered in documents. I had spread them out like a battlefield, and beside them a notebook filled with questions I'd scribbled during the long, sleepless night. Howard stepped in with his briefcase and that same worn leather folder he'd been carrying since Ethan was in middle school. When he saw the envelope Richard had written my name on, something in his expression shifted from professional concern to grim respect. We spent the next 2 hours going through every clause, every legal term, every signature. The paperwork was airtight, notarized, dated, and filed through Howard's own office. Richard had prepared everything with surgical precision. By 11:15 a.m., I had signed 6 documents that officially transferred every asset, every account, every property, and every business interest into my name. Howard made one last call to the estate manager. All further instructions now come from Mrs. Charlotte Pierce, he said calmly. Not Ethan, not Trevor, not even the trust board. Just me. It felt surreal hearing it spoken out loud. Charlotte Pierce, the sole legal authority over everything Richard and I had built. Howard looked at me and asked, do you want them to find out through their bankruptcy, or do you want to call a meeting? I thought for a moment. Let them feel it, I said. Let it hit like a car crash. He smiled. That's the Charlotte I remember. And just like that, it was done. I wasn't someone's leftover anymore. I was the architect, now the one holding every key. And the house was about to shake. I spent the rest of that afternoon on the phone, calm, focused, methodical. Calls to the brokerage, the property firm, the title company, the accountant, each one confirming what Richard had laid out. I was now the sole decision maker. No co-signatures, no committees, just me. By 3:12 p.m., I got a text from Ethan. Hey, weird question, do you know why the lake house account is frozen? I didn't reply. At 3:18, Kendra called. I let it ring. Her voicemail was sweet on the surface, but I could hear the panic bubbling under that polished tone, like she was still trying to smile through a sales pitch. By 4:30, the family group chat lit up like a bonfire. System issues. Anyone else having trouble accessing Mom's accounts? Did something change on the trust side? Then, finally, from Trevor, who rarely texted anything at all. Did someone change access on Mom's end? That's when I knew the panic had started to settle in. I waited until just past 5 o'clock, right when I knew they'd be gathering at Ethan's again, no doubt to hold another strategy dinner without me. I walked up the stone path to the house like I was just dropping off a casserole, folder in hand, calm expression. Inside, they looked startled, fake smiles clinging to their lips like damp laundry. I think you'll want to sit down, I said. They didn't. Of course they didn't. Kendra leaned on the counter like she was in charge. Trevor hovered in the hallway like he wasn't sure whose side he was on. I laid the documents out on the granite counter one by one. This is the updated estate plan. As of this morning, everything is under my name. Everything. Silence. Not the shocked kind, the arrogant kind. The kind that still thinks it can talk its way out of the truth. Ethan scoffed. You can't just move money around. The trust board has to approve this. I looked him square in the eye. There is no trust board. Richard dissolved it last year. You didn't read the fine print. Kendra stepped forward, eyes darting over the papers with perfectly manicured nails. There's no way this is binding, she muttered. That's when I handed her the notarized copy with Howard's signature and the official date stamp. She froze. This isn't a negotiation, I said, voice steady. This is a notification. As of today, you have no legal claim to any of it. The room went still. For the first time in years, it was quiet when I stood in it. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. "The next time you want to talk about my future," I said, "you'll need an appointment." And then I walked out. Not with fury. Not with a tear. Just a quiet strength they'd never seen in me before. But they would now. The next morning, I brewed a pot of coffee using our old drip machine. It sputtered like always, slow and stubborn, but comforting in its way. 5 missed calls from Ethan. 3 from Kendra. 1 from Trevor, predictably late to the mess, like always. I ignored them all and sat quietly by the kitchen window, steam rising from my mug. I wondered if any of them had slept. Part of me hoped they hadn't. At 9:12 a.m., Ethan sent a different kind of message. "Can we just talk?" Not angry, just unraveling. I didn't answer. By noon, Howard called. "Ethan tried to access 2 business accounts this morning from his office laptop," he said. "Both attempts flagged and blocked." "Good," I replied. "Let him dig." But that afternoon, something slid under my front door that made my blood go cold. It was a white envelope, no return address, just my name printed in a shaky, uneven hand. I thought maybe it was from Lily, Ethan's daughter, the only one who ever looked me in the eye at family dinners. But it wasn't. Inside was a printed document, an unsigned psychiatric evaluation recommendation, marked in angry red highlighter. The words jumped off the page: "Capacity evaluation recommended." I'd seen enough of Richard's legal work to recognize a setup when I saw one. Someone was trying to challenge my control of the estate by claiming I was mentally unfit. I didn't feel fear. What I felt was deeper, colder. Insult. They hadn't broken me. So now they were trying to discredit me. That afternoon, I drove to Howard's office and dropped the envelope on his desk. He flipped through the pages, eyebrows raised. "They actually went this route," he muttered. "That's bold." "Trace it," I said calmly. "Find out who wrote it, who sent it, who forged the access." 2 days later, Howard called me again, this time with a sharpness in his voice I hadn't heard before. "It was Kendra," he said. "She contacted a notary she used to work with, tried to backdate the form. We've got emails. One of the assistants flipped she turned over everything voluntarily. Said she didn't want to be involved in a felony." I took a deep breath. "Press charges," I said. "Already in motion." That evening, a sheriff's car pulled into Ethan and Kendra's driveway while they were loading groceries into the back of a borrowed sedan. The neighbors watched like flies to honey. Kendra screamed. Sobbed. Performed like she was in a courtroom drama. But it didn't stop them from cuffing her on the sidewalk for forgery, fraud, and abuse of court procedure. Ethan tried to step in, but the deputy shut him down with one hand on his chest. I wasn't there to see it. But later, Lily called me in a whisper. "She tried to say it was your fault," she said, but no one believed her, not even Dad. For the first time, someone in that house finally saw through the curtain. And the performance was over. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I opened the old photo album Richard used to flip through when he missed the boys. Page after page of toddler smiles, soccer games, holiday mornings. I didn't look at them because I missed them. I looked because I needed to remember that I had once loved them with everything I had. And that now I had to protect what they tried to ruin. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by documents like puzzle pieces. I labeled a new folder firewood. It was a term Richard and I used when something needed to go. Old bank statements, expired warranties, or now connections that had burned through any trust they once held. I began making a list. What assets could I sell? What investments could I freeze? What debts could I call in? By morning, I had a plan. I called Howard first. "Don't press charges on Ethan yet," I said. "Let him stew. I want him broke before he's scared." Then I called Peter, the estate accountant. I hadn't seen him since Richard's retirement party. "Did you know," I asked, straight out, "about any of this?" He didn't deny it. "I had concerns," he said, "but your name wasn't on anything until recently." My hands were tied. Well, I replied, "They're not anymore. Start talking." And he did. For over an hour, he walked me through what Ethan had been doing: suspicious withdrawals, quiet debt accumulation, asset transfers, all built on the assumption that when Richard passed, he'd inherit everything and cover his tracks. It wasn't just greed. It was arrogance. He never thought I'd be the one holding the pen when the dust settled. That night, I sent Ethan a single message. You might want to get a lawyer. And an accountant. And a very cheap apartment. He didn't reply. But I didn't need one. Because the only thing louder than his silence was the sound of everything he thought was his, slipping through my fingers. 3 days later, they invited me to a family barbecue. As if nothing had happened. As if we hadn't turned the entire family tree upside down and shaken all the rotten pieces loose. And though every instinct in me said to stay home and let them eat their lies in peace, I showed up. Not to forgive, but to be seen. Because sometimes silence isn't strength. Presence, I stot. I wore the pearl earrings Richard gave me for our 30th anniversary. I brought a bottle of wine I knew none of them could afford now. And when I walked into the backyard, it was all fake. The smiles, the tablecloths, the music loud enough to keep anyone from saying anything real. I walked right up to the picnic table, dropped the firewood folder onto it, and said, "We need to talk, now." Kendra rolled her eyes. Ethan muttered something under his breath. Trevor, true to form, reached for a beer like a boy hiding behind a soda can. I didn't flinch. I opened the folder slowly, deliberately, and laid out the evidence: loan fraud, forged partnership extensions, unauthorized fund transfers. Every page notarized, every detail confirmed. This, I said, without raising my voice, is what Ethan did while his father was dying. There was no shouting, no theatrics. Just quiet, unflinching truth. People forget what you yell. But they remember how calm you were when you said it. Ethan let out a dry laugh. This is ridiculous. None of this. I cut him off. It's not speculation. It's fact. And the only reason you're not already in jail is because I'm giving you one final chance to own it. Kendra stepped forward, her voice cracking beneath a practiced smile. This is a setup. Ethan didn't steal anything. Richard would have told us. I turned to her, slow and steady. Richard saw it. He just didn't trust you to fix it. That shut her up. Completely. And then Lily. She had been sitting by the fence, quietly, like she had all along. Now she looked at me with wide eyes, like something had finally clicked, like the curtain had finally been pulled back. I turned back to Ethan. You'll start signing things over today, I said. The vehicles, the cabin, the business inventory, the accounts you think are yours. You don't get to enjoy the spoils of what you tried to destroy. Ethan's jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists on the table. You're going to burn this whole family down over some paperwork? I leaned in slightly, voice low but razor sharp. No, you did that when you stole from your father's grave. He fell silent. Not out of guilt, out of fear. The kind that sets in when a person finally realizes you were never bluffing. I turned and began walking toward the back gate. Then, from behind me, someone muttered, probably Kendra. You're bitter. That's all this is. A bitter old woman who couldn't let go. I didn't turn around. But I did speak, just loud enough for them all to hear. No, I said. I'm the woman who paid for this entire yard, and I've just decided you're no longer invited back into it. I didn't wait for a response. I walked through the gate, past the plastic smiles and forced apologies, and out into the golden light of the evening. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of that wine, sat on the porch, let the breeze move through my hair like forgiveness. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even proud. I was finished. And there is real peace in being done. Not walking away in weakness, but walking away in power. On your own terms. The following Monday, I met with a real estate attorney. I handed him a list of every property still in Richard's and my name. The lake house Ethan had once bragged about on Instagram. The downtown condo Trevor had secretly been renting out for under-the-table cash. Even the luxury SUV Kendra used to drive Lily to school and always claiming it was a reward for Ethan's hard work. Every one of them? Legally mine. I signed the sale orders one after another. No ceremony, no hesitation, just clean, deliberate signatures. It felt like cutting away dead branches from a tree that had grown too wild. The attorney asked if I wanted to notify them personally or let the paperwork do it. They didn't invite me to the room when they planned to divide the kingdom, I said. I'm not giving them a front row seat now that it's collapsing. By Friday, Ethan's business account was drained of illegal equity. Kendra's credit cards were declined at a boutique in Westport. Trevor called me in a panic his lease was being terminated. Yes, I said simply, and the next person living there will pay rent like everyone else. Kendra didn't go quietly. She showed up on my front steps again, this time red-faced, shrieking, accusing me of elder abuse, all while standing in designer heels, drenched in irony. I didn't answer the door. Didn't say a word. I just stood behind the blinds, watching her unravel until she stormed off. The next day, I changed the locks on the cabin. The day after that, the sub was picked up from Ethan's driveway right in the middle of brunch, with the neighbors watching behind their hedges. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it to reclaim what was mine. What Richard and I built together, side by side while they waited for the inheritance buffet to open. That night, Lily texted me. Dad's losing it. They're talking about moving in with Aunt Brenda. Is this permanent? I stared at the screen for a moment before replying. Actions are permanent, so are consequences. She didn't respond right away. I saw the typing bubble pop up and disappear a few times, like she wanted to say more. But I understood. She was stuck between the people who raised her and the truth they never wanted her to see. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No tossing, no dreams, just a deep, settling stillness. When I woke up, an email from the estate's financial advisor confirmed what I already knew in my bones. You now hold 100% control. And for the first time since Richard's funeral, I believed it. I made toast, sipped my coffee, looked out the kitchen window as the morning light touched the old wooden fence we'd been meaning to replace for years. Now it was being rebuilt. Not by them. By me. Not out of grief, but out of clarity. And this time I wasn't surviving anymore. I was rebuilding. On my own damn terms. It wasn't until I stood in front of that long, polished dining table again, the very one where they once told me to just stay quiet, that I realized how far I had come. And how far they had fallen. Ethan had sent the invitation himself. Worded like some casual get-together. A reset, he called it. Like the past few weeks had been a glitch in the system, one we could smooth over with burgers and polite smiles. I didn't go to forgive. I went because sometimes the people who tried to erase you need to see you standing tall again, shoulders back, chin up, no longer asking for permission to exist. Kendra wasn't there. Part of her plea deal involved staying away from me for 6 months minimum. Trevor hovered in the background, fidgeting with napkins like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. And Lily, dear Lily, sat beside me, quiet, calm, her hands folded in her lap like someone learning how to be still in a room full of smoke. Ethan stood at the head of the table like he was still the patriarch, still in charge. But even he looked smaller now. Thinner. Drained. Like he had finally stopped believing his own story. He opened with a line he must rehearsed in the mirror. You know, families go through storms, but we weather them. I didn't let him finish. I set down my glass, looked at every single person in the room, and said, "This isn't a storm. This is the consequence. And each of you wrote it." You could hear a pin drop. No one reached for their water. No one shifted in their seat. Ethan opened his mouth again, maybe to defend himself, maybe to throw out one last excuse, but I raised my hand to stop him. "You told me I was just the widow," I said, voice steady, "that I should sit quietly. But I wasn't quiet when I built this family. I wasn't quiet when I kept it alive. And I sure as hell won't be quiet now that I've taken it back." I let it hang there just long enough. Then added, "This table. This room. I own them legally, emotionally, structurally. You're guests here. And I'd suggest you remember that." I stood up, slowly. Pushed the chair back with grace. As I walked to the door, I turned back one last time. "You don't have to like me," I said. "You just have to understand that I'm done making myself small so you can feel big." And then I left. Not because I was angry, but because I was finished. Outside, the sky was clean and sharp, the kind of light Richard used to say was perfect for yard work. I got in my car, took a breath, and realized I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel smug. I felt settled. And there's nothing more powerful than that.